and the ball's been coming out of my hand really good. So I'm pretty excited to see what it's going to be and where it's going to end up, because I don't really know, but I think it's going to be better than I thought it was. So
I think
that's always good.
What's up, everybody? Brandon Golden with the Ghost Carolina Performance Podcast here at the Ghost Lab. I got my man Cam Minacci with the Los Angeles Angels. Finished up the year last year in Double-A. He's in big league camp right now, knocking on the door. We'll see what happens. Obviously, pitchers and catchers are rocking and rolling, and the thing hasn't even fully kicked off yet. But Cam, super excited to have you here tonight, man.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me. Always an honor.
Let's jump into it, man. One of the things I want to talk about tonight is just, let's talk a little bit about like when I first came over to Wake, and Moose was doing some stuff with you, and trying to free up that psoas and just that back hip to be able to allow you to be athletic and as explosive as kind of you guys both knew you could be. Like, walk us through kind of that day and kind of how that went a little bit.
Yeah, so obviously prior to that point, there were some movement things and just some overall, I guess, parts about the body that I was less familiar with. Like the psoas was one of them. And so I'd always felt like I'd been pretty athletic and moved well, but when it came to getting down the mound, there were kind of some things where it was a little bit locked up. So obviously that day you came in, we kind of did a quick assessment. And I think what was glaring, and what has still been something that I have to, get after and stay on top of day to day, is kind of the tissue quality in and around my hips, and just the state that they're in. They get tight pretty easily. I think I'm naturally wound pretty tight. So that first day was kind of just, I remember releasing the psoas for the first time and thinking that I was going to cry. But then just doing that, and then doing more hip lock stuff and being able to apply some of the prep stuff with actual movement stuff, and then going out and playing catch. And I know we've talked about it and it sounds silly, but it was almost an out of body experience, the way the ball came out of my hand. It just came out so easy and so free. And it was like, oh, like, okay, like this is what it's supposed to feel like. This is it. And then even going as far as convincing Moose to let us throw a bullpen that day, just to kind of really hammer the feel home. But yeah, that was kind of how it all started. And then I think that really started my personal journey into, how well can I optimize my body from a movement perspective. And that's kind of been, I think, what has excelled my career to where it is. I like to think that I have pretty good feel for my body and what I'm trying to do now, but it definitely started with that day in the lab. Yeah,
no, for sure, man. And the cool thing about you, like, you and I kind of have a pretty cool relationship, because I would dare to say, like, you trained with Randy Sullivan. Like, he's a super pioneer in a lot of different things, and a lot of the hip locks and a lot of the co-contractions and stuff. And, a lot of stuff that I learned, when I was out with the Dodgers, like, you had a pretty elaborate base of that, to where you and I could communicate at a high level. And I think that just allowed us to, like, dive in deeper. And I think we clicked pretty instantly, like, and we're able to do some different things. I guess one thing I want to ask is, like, how after that day, how did things go, and how important was your prep work, and how did that go from that day to, when you guys were in Omaha, and then, like, throughout the rest of your college career, and, to your point where, you're out there in big league camp? Like, tell me, I guess, how that worked.
So originally it was evidently apparent that I kind of had to do what I would say a little bit of catch up with my body, because things were really tight. Like, my lat was really tight. My forearm was really tight. My hips were really tight quads. So at first it was like, Moose was like, hey man, you got to get in here and hammer this stuff out every day. Like, you need to get like, you got to get up to speed on this.
Right.
So that then the need to be in there for a long time created the base for my routine. So I worked, it started with just trying to loosen up my hips and psoas and my glutes and my quads. And I just spent so much time in the lab, honestly, just hammering it out with foam rollers and lacrosse balls. And I just spent so much time in there. And then once those things got loosened up, I was already familiar with spending a lot of time on my body. And
Yeah.
then it started shifting to, okay, you know, we're going to get into more intricate movements, and this is going to start meshing into my prep work. So I think it just set the base for having a prep routine. I think as a reliever, you hear a lot like you need to be able to get ready quick. That's a virtue of a reliever. But your prep routine prior to the game starting is exponentially different than your prep routine 5 minutes before you take the mound. It's not like, obviously you have to be quick when you get up and get hot, but the only way you can get up and get hot quick is if you've gone in early and done all that stuff. And that was what really made it click for me. And I take pride in being a guy who can get up and get hot in six throws if need be. Like I'm good. I'm always good.
Right.
You know, I say all the time, you don't have to get ready if you stay ready. And so that's just that routine that we kind of started really set the basis for, you know, kind of the rest of my career and how I look at my routine now as a whole. It really hasn't shifted much. I try and tweak it as often as I can where necessary. But I'm committed to spending a lot of time, you know, with my body every day to keep it where I want it.
Yeah, man, that's super cool. It's interesting to hear you say that, because a lot of people do talk about, like, you gotta, obviously the bullpen, you gotta get ready as fast as possible at every level of the game. So that's super cool to hear you say that. What would you say, like, how, obviously you had great stuff coming into college. You wouldn't have been where you were and you wouldn't be where you're at now. How would you say, like, some of the movement quality stuff and just overall attention to those things, like, how did that help your stuff throughout your arsenal and from then and even to now?
I think the biggest piece of it was the awareness factor. Like, there were times where even when I was in high school, like my senior year of high school in Jupiter, I ran it up to 95. And then that spring I was like 87 to 89. So like it, like just being aware of what I'm doing and being able to apply it made all the difference. Like I had such a good basis, I felt like, or a good base going into college with my work. But I didn't always necessarily know why I was doing what I was doing. I knew that it worked, so I just did it. And it got me as far as it did. And then we got to the point where it's like, okay, you have to take a little bit of ownership in your career, and you can't just do something because someone else told you to do it. You need to be able to explain it. Like, you need to be able to hone your craft and be a master of your craft. So yeah, just that overall awareness and being able to, and it's something that I still struggle with. We talked about it the other day, like being able to articulate feels to people. And obviously it's different when you're talking with different people, but I think that's why we mesh so well, because you can understand me, but trying to articulate your feels in different ways and talking to people and talking to coaches and, you know, being able to have a conversation and them not think that you're out of your mind.
For sure. That's, you know, with going from being like a college strength and conditioning coach to working as a performance coach for the Dodgers, that was like one thing that was super evidently clear to me is, you know, as a college strength coach, it was, hey, do this, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. And, you know, at East Carolina, I would, you know, really coach things at a certain level in the weight room. And we were strong, we were powerful, and we had unbelievable players. With the guys that I got to coach there, there's, I mean, shoot, one of them's right behind me, Gab. Like, we got big league guys, like a lot of super talented people. But I didn't understand this part, and I think this is like what's the magic behind like this game is how much coordination plays into this, and how much like being able to teach people and give them the opportunity to go figure it out on their own. Like when I was with the Dodgers, like a lot of the block stuff, the water ball, like not overly coaching what they should feel. When I was a college strength coach, it was, hey, I want you to feel this, this, and this. When I was with the Dodgers, it was like, hey, here's what I want you to try, and then kind of stand back and let them go through it, tell me what they felt, and then, you know, have that, I guess, emotional intelligence to be able to step back and let them do it. So what's, I guess my next question is, like, for high school kids, I mean, we obviously have travel teams here. We have kids that are, you know, 17 down to 9-year-olds. Like, what's one piece of advice you would give, like probably some of our older kids, like our 16, 17s, that it's getting ready for them to be, you know, recruited? We got guys out here training in the lab right now. How important is all the stuff that we're doing at that age in order to be where, you know, you are and some of the things that you've been able to do in your career?
I think that the most often when I think about this question, two things come to mind. I think both are equally important. One is the simple importance of just having a routine, whether it's in baseball or whether it's in life. I think that it's important to be routinized, where you wake up every day and you know what you're going to do. You wake up every day and you take control of the day right when you wake up. You're not letting the day take control of you. So I think for me, learning how to build a routine for baseball prep work also really helped me hone in my morning routines and nighttime routines outside of baseball, which in turn make me a better player.
Yeah.
So understanding the importance of routine and process and being able to stay in your process also is something that you can always revert to. Being success oriented is really tough. And for a lot of the younger guys, they might have been able to be success oriented up to this point.
Yeah.
But you will get kicked in the teeth. And you don't wish it for anyone, but it happens.
It's coming.
And when you get kicked in the teeth, the stronger of a base and a foundation that you've built, the easier it is to just revert to your process and go back and do it again. But if you don't have one and you've just been all about your success, you're going to fall a lot farther.
Yeah.
So I think that that's very important. And then more specifically towards the game of baseball, I think perfecting your craft as a whole. I think that is something that the game is getting away from a little bit. And I'm going to sound maybe like a little bit of an old head, but throwing strikes, being able to field your position are all things that I don't think I necessarily took as seriously as I should have, even in college. All I tried to do was kind of get out there and wind it up and let it go and throw it as hard as I could. And I hit in the back of the line on PFPs. And so just going about your business every day and being able to work on the little things so that you can go out there and just let your stuff play. If you have figured out how to field your position, how to keep your leg times low, knowing where to be in certain times, and that is just an automatic process, it allows you to really focus 100% of your effort and your mind on getting the hitter out, because you've already made and turning those things into a part of your process and a part of your routine. Like, it all goes hand in hand. But I think those two things most specifically are today was first day of pitchers and catchers. We played catch and then we did PFPs for half an hour.
Right.
Like, if you think you're going to get to pro ball and you're not going to do PFPs, like, we did them for half an hour today.
Yep, because they're important. 100%.
Because they're important.
100%, man. Yeah, no doubt. So routines. I want to go back to that real quick. I talk about that a lot, and I talk about that with our guys, and everybody does in high level sports. When you're talking to a kid or a player, college, professional, whatever the case may be, and they don't know what a routine is, and they don't know how to create one, how did you create your routine, and how would you recommend somebody going about doing that?
Yeah, I think kind of concretely, I think it's very exploratory. And like you said, you have the opportunity to create, which is a beautiful thing. I think that there's so many different things out there and so many different resources, and there's videos there's 1,000 different ways to release your psoas now. There's thousands. So pick one. Look at your body, see what you need. If you need to gain weight, think about ways to gain weight. If you need to lose weight, think about ways to lose weight. If you need to lose, like I said, whatever you need, think about ways that you can achieve those things, and then just try them. Because if you have no routine, there's zero downside to trying new things. You're likely only going to get better. And I think the other thing is, because there's so many resources out there today, I like to think of creating a routine as taking a large slab of marble and breaking it down, as opposed to building something from the ground up. All the resources are there. You're going to pick the things that you like, and you're going to bring it down into something that works for you. You're going to continue to chip away. You're going to try things. If you like it, keep it. If you don't like it, get rid of it. It's as simple as that. And over time, you will find something that will give you success. I think that's what it was for me. At first, I did yoga at first. I did yoga every day because yoga was an easy way for me to do full body mobility. I knew that if I did a 30-minute yoga session, I'd probably hit my whole entire body. And then I kind of graduated from that because, hey, I need to work a lot more on my hips in this certain position that I'm not getting in yoga. So it kind of turned into my own yoga flow with added mobility. And then once I was, I guess, versed enough in mobility and what my body needed, I kind of graduated to going from the bottoms of my feet to the top of my head. And then that's the way I would do it. So like I said, I think it's just try new things. Just
Yeah,
pick something. Like you're not gonna. The worst thing you can do is just sit there and not do anything.
yeah,
Just you can get paralyzed by how many things are out there, but it's a blessing that there are so many resources and different things out there for you to try.
yeah, man. That's awesome. And I think like there with nowadays it's a little bit different than probably when you were coming up. I think there's high school kids and even some college kids like just want to social media and they just want to like be cool and all these different things. But I think are for me and what I try to preach to them is like, hey, being cool is being really good and having a plan and like understand like when you talk to somebody and they're 16 years old and they can say, well, like I'm gonna wake up and I'm gonna do X, Y, and Z. I'm gonna go to school and then I'm gonna come home and I'm gonna do my prep work. I'm gonna throw. I'm gonna lift, and I'm gonna go home and eat. Like that's cool, like because that breeds success. And I mean, as we both know, like baseball ends for everybody, and like a part of this too is like being able to build young men and men that are going to be able to be husbands and fathers and take care of families and hold down jobs and do a lot of really cool things. One thing that I was just thinking about, and I kind of want to touch on this, like you obviously I was around the 23 team that went to Omaha, and like being around that team oozes confidence and just the guys that were. I mean, every time I come over there and be in the you either in the shack or in the pitching lab, like would have chills just with miss being around a team and just being around you guys. It was so sick. And just how did you guys mesh so well together, but were also so vulnerable with each other? And then as soon as you guys stepped on the line, like out there across the line, arguably the most confident team in America that year. How did all that come about?
I think it definitely started at the end of the 21 season. We got a group of guys together. Walt actually got a group of guys together at the end of the season and basically said, we need to make a change. We don't necessarily know what that change is, but we have to do something. So we all kind of kept that conversation rolling throughout the summer. We came back sophomore year and we got to work. I think it's underrated. That sophomore year team did a lot for our junior year team. That was not a 1 year journey. So we got the ball rolling sophomore year. We had a pretty solid year, definitely better than freshman year. And then that was kind of what set the table going into junior year. We got all the pieces that we needed. We got pitchers out of the transfer portal. We picked up Bennett Lee behind the plate. So, I mean, it was like kind of the perfect storm and things worked out really, really well. And we had the ultimate goal in mind of like, we knew we didn't necessarily know if we were the best team, but we knew we were one of them. Like we knew it wasn't like us being delusional to say that we can't win a national championship. And we kept that ultimate goal in mind, and everyone was so process oriented. I think Moose did a great job, especially on the pitching side, teaching us that. Moose and Mike McFerrin really helped everyone. They knew how each guy ticked. So they knew how to get to each guy. And they also knew how to get to each guy so that that guy could help others as well. It wasn't just how do I tick for me? It's how do I tick and how do I fit into a system? And that system was a finely oiled machine.
Yeah, for sure.
And so we just knew, and we also just had so much trust in each other. Like it helps when the staff was as good as it was, but you knew that when you left the game, whether it went good or bad, you had to hand the ball off to the next guy. That next guy was probably going to get the job done.
Yeah.
And so we picked each other up a lot. And like I said, that the talent definitely helped, but just knowing that the guy behind you had your back because you've watched him for the last 6 months bust his behind on getting his work done. It's like, okay, I'm good. I'm cool with letting this guy come in and take the ball if I can't get it done that given day. There's nothing worse than not being able to get your job done, but it really helps when someone comes in and can help you out.
Yeah, no doubt. And another cool thing is like obviously you and Brock's relationship is pretty sick. Like how cool was that? And like how did the offense feed into obviously like we just talked about like the pitching side, but like how did the position guys feed into that and like just them behind you and all those guys, like tell me about that.
I mean, they mashed. So they mashed, and for the most part, we did a pretty good job at holding the opposing offense to not that many runs. So if we were the away team, the top of the first inning, they'd score 3 or 4 runs. Like, all right, we're gonna win. Like they produced. Like everyone stepped up. There were very few times when people didn't step up. There was always someone. I mean, even when things seemingly weren't looking that great, someone would shine through, someone would pull through. So, and like I said, like my relationship with Brock, like we were roommates all 3 years. So playing for a team where you've got a group of guys that play together for 3 years is a
Mm-hmm.
really powerful thing.
Yeah.
That's obviously a little bit less prevalent now, with NIL and the transfer portal,
Yeah.
being a bigger deal. So we kind of got that. We were like the last group of guys that really got to go, okay, we're going to invest in 3 years here and stay here. And I think it really showed.
Yeah. No, that's pretty sick. Obviously, like we've talked a little bit about the travel teams and stuff like that. There's a lot of our guys are and their parents as well, and rightfully so, like have questions about college recruiting and what, like, can you just talk a little bit about your process of being recruited and how you landed at Wake Forest and how you knew that was the right spot for you?
Yeah. So my freshman year of high school, I did not make the JV team at Jesuit. I was definitely a later bloomer. I broke my arm and had surgery when I was in 8th grade. So that was certainly a part of it. But that freshman year, I didn't make the JV team even. I played on the freshman team. We had 3 teams at Jesuit. So that summer, when summer ball came around, I played a little bit, but then it kind of started to make a lot more sense for me to just train. Like, it's obviously important to go out and showcase your skills, but if you're showcasing skills that aren't college worthy, then you're kind of just wasting your time. And I mean, it's such a tough thing to say. And obviously, if you want to just go out and play, go out and play.
Right.
Then enjoy it and love the game. But if you're going out to be recruited, you need to have the skills and hone the skills and the craft to be worthy of getting recruited. So for me, it took almost 2 full summers of training at the Armory, putting my head down and busting it. And then, the success started to shine through. And I think that was a super underrated part of the journey for me, was kind of staying out of the status quo of like, oh, just go play summer ball, like just play more games. Like,
Right.
I could have, but at the time, like, I don't remember what the velocity was then, but I knew it wasn't hard enough.
Yeah.
And the stuff wasn't sharp enough. So I took a step back, trained really hard, and it obviously worked out. So that's it. I don't know. That's definitely important is you need to go out and play, but you also need to be ready to play. There's no reason to go out and showcase anything except the best that you're capable of.
Yeah, man, that's super cool. I've had that conversation with somebody the other day, and it's not always well received with the players or the parents, and I get it. Like, I get it. Like, it's the norm is to want to go out and play and showcase all of that stuff. And we have an awesome facility here, and we do a lot of different things that prepares players. But I think it's super cool for them, hopefully, when they're listening to this, to see somebody like you that has had up until this point such a successful career. I mean, you're in big league camp, and you're going to be doing some pretty cool things in spring training, and then as we go into the season, to hear that that's okay. Like, it's okay to train. It's actually probably better.
Yes.
It's probably better for most kids to train and play less. I mean, I think our 17s are going to play 5 tournaments this summer because we want them training. We want them doing different things, and we want them to be ready for their senior year. And to your point, go play in college baseball. How did you know when Wake Forest, I guess more about like the recruiting process, like how did you know they were the right ones, and were there any other schools in the mix, and how'd that part work out?
Yeah. So so I guess it was one summer because I worked real hard that freshman summer. So that's what I was gonna follow up and say. Like, It is crazy what can happen if you put your head down for 2 months, especially at the ages 14, 15, 16. Like, you can do things that you can't even imagine are possible if you just put your head down and work. And that was what I did. So I didn't make the JV team my freshman year. My sophomore year, I came back, made the varsity team. And at the end of my sophomore summer was when I committed. So that kind of spring season, I started talking to schools. That summer, went out, did the travel ball circuit for recruiting purposes when I was ready. And it went really well for me. My final 2 schools were Duke and Wake. I really valued a good education. And I toured both schools. on back-to-back days, and there was just something about Wake that I really, really liked. I really, really meshed with the coaching staff at the time, which wasn't the coaching staff even when I got there my freshman year,
Yeah.
which ended up panning out and being great. But just the whole feel of the school, I just really enjoyed it. It really felt like home, and I committed almost immediately.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's really cool, man. Tell me, like, obviously there's that moment. I've heard a lot of guys like over the years talk about like when they get to a certain spot and just like a school and normally a head coach or a position coach or pitching coach, whatever the case may be, that's like I clicked with that guy. That was my guy. Like, tell me, like, how was it with Walt? Like, Walt's obviously a super good friend of mine and allows me to do a lot of really cool things and has empowered me. What was your relationship like with Walt as a high school kid versus when you were in college versus now?
I've always had a great relationship with Walt. I love Walt. I'll always love Walt. So obviously, like in high school, this is with every college coach, you're going to get a spiel. You don't really know what you're going to get. And I've heard a lot of guys say that when they get to campus, it's a lot different than what they heard on the phone. And Walt was not like that. I think he's a very consistent guy. You know what you're going to get. So getting to campus, I think that I was definitely a nervous kid. I'm very anxious, very high strung, and he did a very, very good job at helping me calm my nerves, helping me to learn how to control that, helping me just learn how to play the game, helping me learn how to be a baseball player. And as we went along my career, we got closer and closer, and I learned a ton from him. We had really great times. We butted heads. We've done the whole 9 yards. And I think that's what makes it the most special. Going back, like even this just past week, going back, you stood behind the cage and watched BP with him and just talked it up. And it's just so great. I'm super, super proud and just honored to have gotten to play for him. He's an incredible coach. And he's definitely played such a role in my success. And I certainly wouldn't be here without all of the help and love that I've gotten from him.
Yeah, man, that's super cool. I was talking to one of I think it was our 16 or 17 new players the other day. Excuse me, super talented kid, has a chance to be really good. One of the things that I was telling him, I was like, man, like you're going to be the most consistent person in your career. Like you're going to have coaches that are with you for a certain time in high school, in college, in professional baseball, like whatever the case may be. How have you taken coaching from your coaches in high school, and then obviously with Moose at Wake, and then like even with some of the guys now, like in professional baseball, there's several pitching coaches, there's coordinators. Like, I guess let me kind of break this question up a little bit. Like, we'll start with a high school and college, and then we'll get to pro ball. Like, how did you take like the coaching going from not making the junior varsity to being on varsity, and then switching that to working with Corey Mascara? How'd that work out?
I think in high school, I was just tried to be a sponge. I tried to just soak up everything I could, just being around, learning. Like I said, after not making even the JV team as a freshman, like, oh crap, like I gotta get to work. So just trying to soak up all that I could. And then getting to college, obviously I had to be a little more specific and fine tune a little bit because I'd gotten far enough along where it's like, okay, we can't just there's too much information now to just take everything in and get better. We have to build a little bit of a filter, know what's good, know what's not going to help. I think Moose and Mike, and honestly you, did an excellent job of helping me build that filter, like knowing what type of movement things are going to benefit me, knowing what type of workouts are going to benefit me, like knowing what to add to my routine, knowing what to get rid of. And that filter that we all built, it takes a village. It takes a village to build good players. So that filter has been something that I've taken, like I said, all the way into my pro career. And in pro ball, there's so many different walks of life and so much experience. And it's honestly it's incredible the amount of baseball knowledge and experience. It's overwhelming. So I find myself almost having a hard time not biting off more than I can chew in pro ball because I'm like, I want to ask this guy this and ask that guy that. And this guy's been here and that guy's been there. But it's just knowing how to ask the questions, and when you receive an answer, being able to filter it and go, okay, I can use this piece and apply that to me. So yeah, just being able to, I'm not sure if that concept necessarily makes sense, but
No,
being
yeah,
able to create your own personal filter,
yeah.
knowing, and that starts with process, that starts with routine. It all goes back to that. Like starting that process and that routine, I knew what things benefited me. I knew what things I liked. I knew the style of training that I meshed with. And
Hmm.
so that's kind of that base. It's changed over time, but it's stayed very consistent.
Yeah.
So that's been super helpful and important for me.
Yeah, man, I think so too. One, like, as I was listening to you talk right there, like, just the confidence in the ability to do all of those things. Like, how did you go about building your confidence to be able to like stick to your beliefs and some of the things that you enjoyed and being able to have those conversations? Like, where did that confidence come from, and how did you learn? Obviously, because we learn, everything's a learned trait to a certain extent. Like, how did you learn to be confident in that?
I think it started, training at the Armory. So next off season will be my 10th off season at the Armory.
Yeah.
So I started there when I was 14,
Hmm.
and that was kind of when weighted balls and water bags were still a little dicey.
Yeah.
And I totally bought into the Armory's process at the time. I didn't necessarily know what I needed to do, but I saw the success that Randy had had with other players. I said, okay, like I'm going to throw caution to the wind. I'm going to buy into this process 100%, and I'm going to see where I end up.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of people, question it. A lot of people say, "Oh, what are you doing? The water bags, weighted balls, blah 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 blah." And I think the first piece was that I started to see a little bit of success. So I'm like, okay, this works. Like you might not like it, but I'm seeing that it works, so I'm going to keep doing it.
Hmm.
And then that was kind of my approach in high school was I was bought all into the Armory's process, and that got me to college. And then once I got to college, honing that process and becoming more confident was really the work that I did with Moose and Mike. And it was all mental. It was, it started with meditations. It was just getting into my own head and learning how to quiet the noise. And knowing that the work that I was doing was good. I hate to keep harping on it, but going back to being process oriented, knowing that the process was going to work over time. Like Moose and Mike built the most elite process. We had a cheat code. They built us the most elite processes we could have. All you had to do
Yeah.
was invest in it. And so, like I said, I did a lot of work after my freshman year on my mental game. I think that's obviously important being a back end guy. So just being able to quiet my mind. There's a lot going on up there. So and I like that. That's a trait about myself that I like, but it's also something that I need to keep in check. It helps me to be, you know, inquisitive and introspective, but it can also, get me down rabbit holes at times. But being able to know when to stop, being able to know when to say that's enough, being able to quiet my mind has been something that I've continued to work on and take into my professional career, and it's done wonders for me.
Yeah, man, that's really cool. A couple more things, and I'll let you go enjoy that AZ weather, man. What's like maybe one or two things, advice wise, if you could, if you were sitting in front of, we have like 120 kids in our organization right now. What are or like a 2 to 3 liner piece of advice? Obviously, they're training with me, training, playing for us. What you got for them?
Uh, well, one, listen to Brandon. He'll get you right. Listen to Brandon. Two, this is something that I'm really trying to work on myself, so it might be a little bit unfair that I'm saying it now, but get off your phone and go out and enjoy the opportunity that you have. I think that I saw a video yesterday talking about how, with how good people have gotten, it seems like it's the hardest it's ever been to excel at anything, but the contrary might actually be true. With the rise of social media and with everyone having their head downs in their head down in their phones, and with how much fast food is out there and instant gratification and how many people are enthralled in that, you ever thought about how it might actually be even easier now than ever if you just decide to commit yourself to your process and to trying to achieve your dreams, like set an intention and go and do it, and don't stop until you've done it. There are ways to do it. There's nothing that an individual can't do. And the levels of things that you can achieve are beyond what you can even imagine. I think a lot of guys don't necessarily have the eyes to see what they can achieve because they've never done it or they've never even tried. If you just put your head down, like you said, like I challenge your guys, especially the guys that decide to not play for a summer and go and train, put your head down for 2 to 6 months, like take a summer and a fall, and you will come back and you won't even recognize yourself. And that's incredible. I think, I mean, in 6 months, you can change your life.